Hi, everyone. Um, we've already seen tonight some of the great things that are happening at Alberta Infrastructure and some of the great possibilities of BIM. And later tonight, you're going to see some great things people are already doing. I'm here to share the story of how one gets going in that fantastic new technology. So I'm here to share the story of Republic Architecture's BIM adoption and how we started using the technology and to address some of the challenges that we faced to hopefully inform or at least provide some idea on how you can face your own challenges and come out successful. So a little bit about me. I'm a career technology specialist with a sustainability and visualization focus. Currently design technology leader in the Republic, but formerly I worked as an applications expert with Imagine Technologies, one of our sponsors tonight. And over the course of those two positions, I've had the opportunity to experience a lot of stories from a lot of firms all over North America and some of the challenges that they've faced in implementing BIM. So today, what I'm going to share with you is Republic's story. So just as a prelude, when I joined Republic, they were only a few years old. It's a relatively new firm. In many ways, they were still fortifying how they worked and their processes. There were many new faces bringing in lots of different experiences and different backgrounds. And as that tends to create it, created some fragmented production and workflow problems. So Republic recognized this, and they wanted to improve the quality of their work and drawings. So with this in mind, it was easy to see that BIM was on its way, that it was a big trend in the industry. They were beginning to see a lot of RFP requirements, which were starting to include BIM requirements, and they had a desire to benefit from inherent advantages that BIM offered. They fundamentally understood that there was a better way of working than 2D CAD, and they hoped that this would help streamline their design and drafting. So with that in mind, we kind of start our story. So this is some of the 4 points that I always say to anybody that's looking to get started in BIM implementation. Number one is seek help. BIM is a big beast, and trying to run in and attack it head on will usually cause a lot of problems. It takes somebody within your firm that has a real desire and passion for the technology to drive it forward. So you need to find a champion, somebody that can lead that charge. Once you have that champion, make a plan. And most importantly, and where most firms fail, is stick to the plan. Things to remember during this process is to stop thinking in CAD terms. BIM is a different process. CAD is a digital pencil. BIM is a virtual building modeler. So trying to approach the two the same way is going to cause a lot of problems. Stay open-minded and open to change. This is a key one. Too many firms stay focused on what they've been doing in CAD and try to translate that directly into BIM to meet with a lot of challenges along the way, when really you could just slightly change that tag that you're so stuck on and do it a different way in BIM, or in Revit was our tool. So another thing to keep in mind is that the benefits of a BIM model are at least equal to the effort that you put into it. Meaning that if you try and cut all the corners you can on a building information model, well, you're really not going to get a lot of use out of it. It's going to start, the returns are going to start seeming not that great. So at Republic, what they did was they sought help. A couple great sources of this are the Winnipeg BIM community, a recent creation in the city of like-minded people in this city that are looking to grow together, share knowledge, and grow the adoption of BIM in our city. That's a great place to reach out to. Republic reached out to Imagine Technologies. They were looking to get some professional help to kind of work on number 3, form that plan. So at the time, I was working with Imagine Technologies, so I found myself sitting across the table with Republic, with the person that they had chosen to lead the charge, and we made a plan. And I found myself sitting in a training room with said champion, but ultimately Republic got to number 4 and fell off the rails. Whatever the driver was at the time just didn't follow through. So flash forward about a year later, and I'm sitting at a desk at Republic. I am now number 2, and I am working on that plan to get them going again. So with that in mind, these are some of the key challenges you're going to face with any BIM implementation: infrastructure, training, and initial cost. So Republic's infrastructure, well, these are some of our issues. When I started at Republic, we were 100% Mac firm. As anybody that has tried to use Revit knows, it is not a native Mac program. So that was the first major problem we had to overcome. We looked at alternates, or I should say Republic looked at alternates before I started, and they found that although there were alternates to use in the Mac environment, Revit offered the most. And in those other tools, our sub-consultants, structural MEP, were not going to be using those other programs to accomplish their tasks. But Revit is something that they could use. So we attempted virtualization with some varying degrees of success, but ultimately it became a Band-Aid solution to moving away from the Mac OS system. Now, this is not a great answer to the question of the 100% Mac Office, and I'm sure people are not happy, and I had a lot of people unhappy at Republic when I told them that I was going to be getting rid of their MacBook and giving them an HP. So you can imagine the fights that I had at that point. But as part of that process, we staggered the rollout. We chose to take the route of custom building PCs in-house because we had the ability. So rather than going to a provider or a vendor that was going to offer us certain builds that kind of met what we needed, but kind of didn't meet what we needed, we chose to build exactly what we needed and save a little bit of money along the way. We shuffled the existing hardware to the older Macs we sold off, and then the newer Macs got pushed to some of our marketing department and admin, while PCs began to replace the other users. So not a great solution, but these are some of the solutions that we had with these, with tackling that. The other big one is training. Revit, like I said, is a beast, and it is complicated. And, old habits are hard to break. Everybody comes out of school and has for years being very comfortable with AutoCAD. And Revit is a lot more complex than AutoCAD in a lot of ways. There's a lot of dials and knobs to know. You can sit at a desk in front of Revit for an hour trying to figure out why something isn't working, and only to realize a little bit later you missed that checkbox at the beginning that would have solved all of your problems. So when it comes to training, well, classes can be expensive. It's hard to pull people away from projects for any length of time. And ultimately, you can spend all the money you want on training, but if you don't use it, you will lose it. I speak from, not experience, but I've trained many students that I met a year, 2 years down the road, only to find out that they didn't immediately go back to their firm and use it on a project, and now they don't know how to start Revit. Our solutions was to make a support system readily available in the office. Ultimately, that was me. We started throwing people onto projects after a short demo session for myself, and made sure that I was available to help them along whenever they needed it. So we utilized a more on-the-job learning, utilizing a mentoring method. What we also started to do is take the people that were taking to it a little quicker and start putting them into positions to start showing people how to do things in the office. Ultimately, the best way to reinforce training is to have that person try and train somebody else. So that's what we started to do. We also tried to find fun learning methods in the office that would engage people a little bit more. You can use things like modeling their own house as part of training, or finding a design competition in which all submissions need to be done in Revit. Ultimately, you need to have a little buy-in from your upper management to kind of make that appealing and get people off their projects. But it's one of the methods we used to help reinforce training. Initial investment is another big one. The issues, which are pretty common all the way along the board, are Revit is expensive, training is expensive, and new hardware is expensive. But ultimately, you're also taking people off your projects to train them, which adds up even more costs. And ultimately, there's really not much you can do about that. These are some of the things we did to help minimize those initial costs. We utilized network licensing. So we bought a pool of licenses, about 5, and that's what we started to use for all of our Revit projects. Network licensing just has people pulling a license when it's needed, and we didn't have to go out and purchase a bunch of Revit licenses for everybody. We didn't have to worry about dealing with the hassle of having a Revit station where people had to go sit to do all of their Revit work, and it worked very well for us. As people started to learn a little bit more, what we did is we used AEC collections for our heavy users. They include AutoCAD, Navisworks, 3ds Max, and Revit, and we started buying them standalone licenses and taking them off our pool of licenses. We leveraged some existing content. We looked at existing BIM standards. We looked at the CAN BIM standard. We looked at the UK BIM standard and even some of the US, the ones in the US. It's important to not try and rewrite the book and kind of use what's out there. Again, to help curb the hardware expenses, we built our PCs in-house. Not everybody is going to have that capability, but we did. And it really benefited us in the long term. Ultimately, we were able to produce a computer for a few thousand less, or $1,000 less than buying it outright from a vendor like Dell or HP. In the case of laptops, well, we still buy HP computers, but there's not a way around that. We also started to minimize classroom training. Now, this isn't for everybody. Classroom training is sometimes the best way people learn, but what was working, it wasn't working for us, taking people off the projects. Projects just started to become more dominant, and classes were being canceled, and it was kind of ruining it for everybody. So we minimized that classroom training and emphasized on project training. More recently, as people have started, I start sitting with them for an hour session here, an hour session there, giving them the basics, and then ultimately moving them onto a project, and then starting with them piece by piece to get them started on the project, filling in the gaps as I go. And that has worked very well for us. Some of the benefits and takeaways from this whole process and some of the things that we've started to notice, well, we're producing much better quality drawings, and our designs are a little bit better quality too. Also, our efficiency is much higher. It goes without saying, if you've looked at any kind of promotional video for Revit, you're working on your floor plan and your elevations are starting to take shape. Your sections are already partially done. You're working on a lot more of the drawings that you need all at once. So there is a lot to be said for the efficiency of the whole process. We're working in a rich 3D environment as well. So you're able to catch problems that generally come from poorly coordinated 2D CAD drawings a little bit easier in Revit. And ultimately, we're prepared for the future. We're prepared for the Alberta infrastructure project we go for, or something like that, where they have a very strict BIM requirement. We've also opened up doors like Dynamo that have started to automate our tasks that are extremely time-consuming and repetitive. We're steps away from virtual reality, and we are just a lot of doors open for us as soon as we were ready and willing with BIM. Some of the misconceptions that we found, or that some of the common misconceptions that we found to be false were, few projects are too small to benefit from BIM. Yes, there's going to be that one project where you have to do a bathroom renovation. You have great CAD files, and all you need is a floor plan with a couple of notes. Yeah, well, there's no benefit to trying to put that in Revit and go. But ultimately, a well-trained Revit user can produce plans a lot faster than anyone in CAD. There's just a natural efficiency to it. It's easy to say, but don't think of the costs now and look to the efficiencies that you're getting in the future. Yes, there's going to be some upfront costs, but things like problems during construction, coordination issues that cause thousands and thousands of dollars in added work because they weren't caught during the design document stage, can be mitigated through the use of BIM. But also, employee salaries are a big draw on any business. Maybe we should look at ways to make them work a little bit, or help them work a little bit more efficiently. And ultimately, Revit contains all the CAD tools that you need. So yes, if you want, open up that drafting view and start throwing some 2D lines down and making your plan. But I speak for BIM managers everywhere when I say, please don't do that. So with that in mind, I'm going to share with you a quick story about our own office. So Republic recently moved into a building on 385 St. Mary Avenue. Originally built in the 1950s for an insurance company, over the years it had seen many renovations, which led the existing drawings to be somewhat inaccurate, but this is what we started with. Enter Revit. Ultimately, what we did is we built what we had off of the drawings. So this is an image of the existing model that we built in Revit and utilized Revit's phasing abilities to start designating demolished components, the components that we weren't going to be using in the design. This really helped us because it gave us an idea of the amount of work, easily gave us an idea of the amount of work that was going to be involved in the demolition. But it also gave us a very nice 3D model to work with when we started our designs. So here's a couple of examples that we came up with during the design process. Early design leveraged massing and things like that to kind of bubble diagram things up and see how things were going to progress. And Revit's design options ultimately gave us the ability to explore multiple options really quickly and easily, all within that same environment, and great tools to compare them against. We were able to analyze our design. So we utilized some CFD analysis, as you can see up top. We were looking at the time, we were looking at a rooftop patio. Well, we had this tool available to us. We wanted to see how bad the wind was going to be in the middle of the summer. So we ran it through this wind tunnel program and showed us how we could design to mitigate that ability. And anecdotally, if you see the little blue lines coming up against the medical arts building here and how they're flowing up the building, well, I watch trash bags and other kind of trash fly up that building all the time. So it's got some accuracy to it. We looked at solar analysis and daylight analysis as well, just to get an idea of how much daylight we were dealing with. Not much that we had to work with because we have, not that we really had to worry because we have curtain walls on both the north and south faces. We were able to visualize our model very easily from the Revit model, doing some photorealistic VR and some photorealistic renderings, as you can see here. We also put 3D views in literally every corner of the building so that everybody could see throughout the design what their new home was going to be. There were some missed opportunities on this project, however. Ultimately, our consultants didn't use BIM on the design side. So that takes away a lot of the power that you have in BIM. When you have to coordinate electrical and mechanical and structural drawings manually with a Revit model, well, you're still losing some of its power. Not really a drawback, but laser scanning could have been used on the building to get a more accurate idea of the existing model. Ultimately, it wasn't available to us at the time. And training problems started to crop up. My fault, kind of. But too many shortcuts taken, disorganized workflows led to a cluttered model. Ultimately, we got through it, but there were definitely some meetings where I had to take a little bit more of a hard stand than I would have preferred. Ultimately, what we're left with is a unique opportunity to use this life cycle model that we've developed. Now in our design model at our office, we have the existing model. We have all of it that was demolished. And we have our current design in the same model. And we're starting to design the site improvements that we're going to do in the new year. We plan on incorporating some of our as-built data like data systems, IT infrastructure, and figuring out ways to track issues and maintenance right within Revit. Not the greatest for some reasons. There are better tools out there, but we're going to use Revit to do it. Combine that with Microsoft Access for accessing the database to give people access that aren't Revit users. We have a lot of great uses ahead for us. Does anybody have any questions? If you want to find me after, I'll be walking around, but thank you, everybody.